So I think they might have missed all of that funniness, but that is fine.
I don't see us live yet.
I see us live now. Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody. I'm still watching the YouTube and I don't see us. I want to refresh that.
Yes. Hopefully
Hello,
everybody
Michael. How are you? Oh, yeah, we are live.
Excellent.
Look at that.
I should be clear. You should be clear.
I am pretty clear.
Awesome. How is everybody this evening? Hope you can all hear us. I see some people were already waiting for us.
No audio is the question.
I can see audio.
Mikey says I can see audio. So
already waiting for us.
In this easier.
I can see audio.
Mikey says.
Yep. Everybody will be able to hear a repeat then. So yeah, that was just me testing. Yeah.
There we go.
Have you tried unmuting it? Or turning the volume up? It happens.
We have been away from our streams for 2 weeks.
Yes.
And it's been an eventful 2 weeks, hasn't it, Michael?
Yes. I got married.
You did?
Yeah.
I was there.
Yeah.
And quite sleepy.
I
thought cycling 25 miles each way was a good idea.
You
just glad I brought a change of clothes.
Yeah, there was a great part where I stood up to do my speech, and because I'm not particularly tall, once I'd stood up, a raucous from my family table, "Go on, stand up!"
Which I was at. Stand up! Stand up!
I am.
Yeah, I was sat between Mikey's brother and stepbrother, which made me feel very much part of the family.
You blended in perfectly. It was fine.
I did, because I've got the beard and the short hair.
That would be the one. Yeah, absolutely fantastic time. And then I've been slowly getting back into things. Kind of had a weekish off afterwards, and did quite a bit of planning on one of the days there as well. Also got the course launch, the procedural weapons course in that week.
In fact, we've launched 2 courses because we also have a Tukey Bubble launch.
Yeah, we disappeared for 2 weeks, but we got some stuff done. How
about
that?
We were still working.
So yeah, do you want to talk about the Tukey Bubble course?
I was about to say that about the procedural weapons course since you got there first.
Yeah.
I think it's only fair. So would you like to talk about Tukey Bubble?
Yes, let's talk about Tukey Bubble.
No, you talk about your one.
Okay, so
hello, Roderick.
We've been building up for the procedural weapons course for the last month or so. It's the first official Blender release of the Action RPG Kickstarter. It's been absolutely phenomenal. I'm so glad we waited a little bit for Blender 3 to come out and mature, because geometry nodes changed massively, which would have been a right. Well, it have had to been a rewrite basically, which would have been annoying. And there's one lecture, because they're adding things to Blender all the time. There's actually one lecture in there where I show a 3.2 feature, but you need to go in and activate a few things and use the alpha. Not that I'd recommend doing that for production work, but as you're playing along and learning, you might as well learn the latest things as they come out. And it actually makes part of the course a bit simpler if that was already out, but it's not, so we get to learn a bit more Python along the way. So it's a good mix of doing some low poly modeling right at the beginning to get some assets. I really only go to the length of making placeholders because that's not really what the course is about. It's about doing procedural generation. And once we've created those assets, we bring them over into geometry nodes and do the manual assembly. So as if you were just making it a one-off. We then focus on automation in Blender. Automation can save you so much time, especially when it comes to just clicking a button and exporting. In fact, it literally can save you hundreds of hours doing that. And then we finalize it by adding another point. So with our axe itself, we've kind of got the handle of the axe and the head of the axe, or the blade as I take it down to in the end. But that's not how a sword's constructed. And it became apparent as I was putting the course together that we could actually make this script create any weapon, and you could take it to the nth degree and put further attachment points onto a handle or whatever and reassemble any particular weapon that you like. So we've got an axe generator,
put like bipod legs on your sword, and then a suppressor at the end.
Yeah, exactly. If you really wanted to. I mean, you might. There are actually some comical results from doing that. So
I did see one of them.
Yeah. I posted that on the Discord where we got an axe with a really stubby handle, and actually,
a dagger axe.
But actually, you could imagine that as a weapon if you had a particularly like big character who's like me smash,
or it's just a punch dagger.
It could be like extra knuckle dusters, but in a blade form. Yeah. So I would, whilst I was talking about that you can see some of those at the end of the trailer. I'm going to play the trailer now. For those who weren't aware of it or haven't seen it yet, I'm going to play the trailer. And then we'll come back. Do you want to know how to create hundreds of procedurally generated, game-ready assets at the click of a button? Then I've got the course for you. My name is Michael, and in this course we're going to start off by generating some placeholder assets in Blender 3.1 and exporting it ready to use in a game engine. In this case we'll be using Godot 4, but you can use any one that you want. After that, you will learn how to use geometry nodes to rapidly assemble weapons so you can have a large variety of game-ready assets. But that's not all. Next, you'll learn key skills to boost your productivity in Blender by automating it using Python. Finally, you will expand both your geometry nodes knowledge and your Python to create a weapon generating script capable of assembling and exporting hundreds of weapons in one click. Now, as long as you have a little Blender knowledge, you'll be able to pick up this course and dive straight in. We are using Blender 3.1 and onwards, so it comes with all of the latest features, including that wonderful geometry nodes. So enroll now and boost your productivity in Blender, and I'll see you in the course. Okay, there we go. Awesome. So now would be we usually leave questions and stuff to the end, but actually if any of you have any questions about the course specifically, this would be a great time to ask about it. I've
got a question, although it's more about the alpha version of Blender than it is about the course.
Yeah.
Is it in code freeze yet, or you're gonna have to go back and change things?
Well, the actual thing that we're using in Blender 3.2 is a node. So the node's already there. It's just a different, it comes from a different branch. So within Blender itself, once you've downloaded the alpha version, you can turn on developer options and enable things that aren't ready for production yet. So this actually gives us access to 2 new nodes. That is exactly what we were talking about actually about 3 weeks ago, where I was trying to 4 weeks ago anyway, where we were trying to work out the Python in order to select certain elements of our construction in code rather than having to use geometry nodes because these nodes didn't exist. And then suddenly, bam, node exists. I'm like, okay, well, I'll do the lecture and then say, well, this makes the other thing redundant, but it is also useful knowing the other way of doing it because you can apply that to other things that perhaps don't have their nodes written yet.
And now we have a question from Elicom, which was, what was the specific node?
Yes, I'm going to have to look that up.
And while he does that, I'm going to share this. I just bit my tongue.
I don't
like it. Mikey, I bit my tongue.
Ouch. I don't like biting tongue. Right, I need to open up the alpha version, so it'll take me a few seconds to do this. Whilst I'm having a look at that, if you let me know if there are any other questions, or indeed you can start thinking about Tookie Bubble.
Thinking. There are currently no other questions, but I'm going to wait for that to come up before I start talking about Tookie Bubble because I don't really want people's brain to be over there and then come back. You look like you're about to say something. Are you about to say something?
Yeah, Blender's just loading up at the moment, so it'll only be a few moments for me to get the right file.
Great. I was filling silence, so it's very professional silence filling. This is me filling silence.
Okay, so the nodes are, let me make this full screen. It's a named attribute. So with Blender, in fact, I can probably switch it. I don't know if that would work. Hold on. Let me go and grab this window and do my main screen. Okay, brilliant. Hopefully this will be there. So yes, so this is something we end up doing. So we create a couple of node groups in order to instance things in place, and we can use a Boolean to say yes and no to things. And if we have a named attribute, we can say that anything named blade, that's what we're going to use. And the same down here with pommel. Axes don't have pommels, but they look pretty cool when you start putting them on.
They don't have
But
pommels, although I have seen them with spikes on the back of the handle.
yes, so under the add menu here, this is a lot smaller. In fact, I may have it turned off on this version of Blender again. But yeah, under here, named attribute, is that appearing under here? Yeah, there we go. So the named attribute node is the new one amongst a few other things. And it's really interesting that this is hidden under experimental features. So within Blender itself, you have to turn on, I believe, developer extras under your preferences, under the interface tab. And then once you've done that, experimental appears. You can actually see there are a load of different things that are kind of hidden away that you can turn on. And these are the different branches which you can click on, and it'll take you to that particular area. So here we can see what it does, and obviously if you're following this particular branch, you can work out what's going on, which is pretty awesome being able to do that. I don't want to leave that, otherwise I would disappear. And yeah, that's it. So super useful being able to turn these things on and off, and now you know where to find them.
And the course actually ended up being a little bigger than we were expecting.
Yeah, ended up being 7 hours long. I thought it was going to be a 3 to 4 hour course. It ended up being 7, covering all of those different elements.
Mm-hmm. It was good. It was good to get all those elephants covered.
There you go. That's my impression for the evening.
Very good. Mikey. What do you get if you cross an elephant with a mouse?
I don't know. What do you get if you cross an elephant with a mouse?
Big holes all over the skirting board.
Tom and Jerry would make you feel proud.
I used to be a professor, you know.
So if you want to hit, I just spotted another question from Melicon. What's Eevee next? This is Eevee next. Yeah, I think some improvements are coming to Eevee. Excuse me, with one of the biggest changes so far being Cycles X with Blender, which has absolutely transformed Cycles. So Cycles used to be a really, really slow thing to wait for. You click render and then you go off and make a cup of tea. You might even, depending on your computer, have to go to bed and see what it looked like the next day. So when Eevee came out with Blender 2.8, it kind of revolutionized what could be done in Blender because it's so much quicker. But it used the same techniques as a lot of game engines use, where a lot of it was faked. So you had to turn extra layers on. So if you wanted reflections on your model, that's something you'd have to turn on. Each one of those things would start to have a performance hit. But eventually you could end up with Eevee taking just as long as Cycles did. Depending on, again, the settings and everything. Not with simple scenes, but with more complex scenes, you could certainly approach that. But Cycles X came along, and if you have the appropriate hardware with accelerated ray tracing, basically, if you've got an NVIDIA graphics card, anything from the 10 series onwards, I think, it suddenly made this denoising would come in, and it would save you so much time. I even went through a time of just rendering with one sample because I love the pastel-y, paintery effect that you end up with denoising information where it has no idea. And it's amazing sometimes it ends up pretty accurate as well.
I just like the word denoise. I think it'd be a lovely name for a girl.
And a variation on Denise, perhaps.
It's been one of those days. So yeah, it looks really good. I love the stuff you've managed to make. I believe the next plan is to go and generate a bunch of stuff for the asset pack and for me to play with in Godot 4.
Yes.
I actually don't have anything to show in Godot 4 for the ARPG this week because the latest alpha either changed or corrupted my mesh files. So
you have to redo all those meshes again. Yeah.
Right, which is going to happen sometimes in alpha. So I'm not, concerned about it, but it means I sat there for an hour saying, okay, so where's the issue? Oh, here it is. Do I really want to recreate the code? Not really, if I'm not adding anything yet. So, leave that.
Just in case it re-breaks it later on. So CG grind there. Yeah, with Cycles X, which is the default render now in Blender. So if you've got Cycles, you've got Cycles X. I believe it's on by default, and underneath your system tab in the preferences, there's an option. If you use optics, you're going to get the speed up. So if I do, I've lost my screen again. I can't see what I'm showing people. Right, let's show people. Here we go. So on here, you're in your user preferences, and under system, you've got a couple of options here. Obviously, none. It's going to use your CPU. CUDA is what used to be used all the time, and it's still there, available for accessibility, and you can use your processor as well if you want to. Often using your processor is a lot slower, but in some cases you may have quite a fast processor or a slower graphics card, and they actually end up in parity. So sometimes that can actually help. I've not found it to, so I leave it off personally. Optics will end up using the denoising side of things, and then it's important to actually come in here anyway. And even if this is ticked, sometimes untick it and tick it again. I've Melicon, in fact, in the chat, he thought he had rendering with his GPU turned on, and it said it was turned on. And when I saw the time of him rendering, this is when he had a 1070, I think, he ended up ticking it, unticking it, and putting it back again, and suddenly it worked. And the clue with that is usually in your render property. So in your properties window, if you go to your render options, at the moment this is set to Eevee, but if we change it to cycles, device here should say GPU, and it should not be grayed out. So it may say GPU compute, but still be grayed out. And that means you have to come in here and just toggle that on and off again, and it will work. And then finally, to get that real power when it comes to denoising, there are two options. Under sampling, we have the viewport, which is the 3D viewport that most of you will be familiar with over on this side. There we go. That's a bit more of a standard layout for you all. So we've got the viewport itself. So if we turn that on, hopefully that doesn't ruin the stream. Because it can do.
I'll let you know in a few seconds.
Brilliant. But if you turn, there's no lighting in this scene because this isn't a presentation scene. But if you turn on denoising, you can often lower your sample count as well. And then we've got the render here. So you've got the settings for the viewport. And then finally, you've got the settings for your render. Don't get the two confused, because it can end up looking very pretty in the viewport and a bit rubbish in the render. And that's where you press F12 up here when you go ahead and render your image. This is what the render one refers to. Yeah, and
Ta-da!
I'm back again. So yeah, here we go.
I timed that pretty well. I can't actually see myself yet, but I thought it's probably about now. So yeah, new course, lots of fun things happening. I'm looking forward to getting a whole bunch of assets and putting the new asset pack up, which we'll probably have to tweak once Godot 4 is stable.
Yes, yeah. I think when it comes to getting the asset pack done in terms of the raw assets is the first priority, and then actually making sure that they're stable.
The workflow and
yeah. So there'll be an asset pack available, but it won't have the TSCNs already until Godot 4 is stable. And I've had this issue. There were a couple of things that I want to dive into Godot 4 and play with. However, it's still a bit dodgy on my machine. And actually all of my machines. We're still having the alpha.
A couple of problems with rendering or running Godot stuff that I send you.
Yeah. And we don't know whether that's a Linux thing, but it's something we're looking into, as in a different compilation. It can happen.
Yeah, it can, but it's not.
But yeah, we'll work out what's going on there, and we might reach out to some of you guys as well. So if you want to try out some very raw code of things, just to see whether things are working, because it's great to get feedback from people that are eventually going to take the course. You know, does this work?
So yeah, so there's that. Meanwhile, while Mikey was getting ready, I launched to get married. That is, I launched Tuki Bubble. Which is a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it. Do you want to play the trailer for it, and then we can talk about some of the things we cover and answer questions and things?
Yeah, sure. No worries.
Okay, for those of you who don't know, Tuki Bubble is based off the classic Puzzle Bobble game, which was an amazing sort of sequel to Bubble, which is a two-player platform game. Yeah, so that was it. Over to you, Michael. Tookie Bubble is a match-3 bubble-popping puzzle game inspired by the cult hit Puzzle Bubble. In this mini-course, you'll learn how to make a tile map-based 2D puzzle game. We're going to cover a bunch of topics, including updating tile map cells based on rigid body collision, making the best use of sprite sheets, matching neighbouring bubble cells, detaching bubbles if they're not connected to the ceiling, the magic of config files, making a persistent high score table, lowering a ceiling and tile map, adapting the tile map cell coordinates after the tile map has been moved, switching to and from symbols mode to make the game more accessible to players with colour blindness, and much more. This course is designed for people who are comfortable with the basics of the Godot game engine, and is designed to be completable in an afternoon. At the end of this course, you'll have a joyous, addictive, and easily expandable puzzle game with delightful characters and bubbles everywhere. You can even play the prototype free of charge right now by downloading it from our itch.io page. So sign up today and help your players learn the mystical art of bubble popping.
Hello and welcome back. There we go.
Yep, so with the little pause there, I have to rely on Michael. So when he hesitates like that, it's hard to know. So yeah, Tookie Bubble. It's one of those nice mini course projects, and by nice, I'm picking a stupid word, but it's one of those ideal mini course subjects because the game itself is quite simple. But there's a couple of gotcha moments that you're not expecting. For example, getting the position of a tile on a tile map once you've moved that tile map. And there's little things like that that you have to sort of work around. Getting the particles to look right, the colorblind mode. It's also just a fun game to play. I always like when I make a project and it when you have a spare 20 minutes where you're waiting for something like to cook and you just run it and you just find the time passing quickly. So it was a lot of fun to make and a lot of fun to play. I did briefly consider multiplayer, but it's sort of exponentially more complicated once you do that.
And being the great salesman that we are, we have not shown anybody any of the links for these courses. So I'm going to paste them now in chat. I'm sure some of you guys have already picked it up.
Go to our itch.io page and play Tookie Bubble, and you don't have to take the course. You can just play the game.
Do you want?
It also features Panda Friend.
Panda Friend,
a new character in our mythos.
I haven't got the link for the itch.io at the moment, but I can go and grab that in a second.
Sounds good. Yeah, we had this idea of adding like a few characters that we can bring in at various games and various courses, like Tookie, like Panda Friend. And we sort of need to figure out how to actually get them made, because ideally we get some sprite sheets made in different styles, but that means that one of us has to spend the time making a bunch of pixel art characters. And I can do that, but that's like a couple of weeks when I'm not working on other things.
Very true.
We get this problem a lot, right? We want to do this, but we don't really have the time or the manpower yet to do that.
There we go. So I've just pasted in there the top link of the 3 is the Blender course, making procedural weapons in Blender, and then we've got Tookie Bubble as the second link, and then the third link there is you can play Tookie Bubble on itch.io.
Oh, and I've just got a message from Obo. Apparently, Polygon 2D booleans are a thing.
Oh, very nice.
I might have to make a Worms clone at some point.
But what does that mean?
It means, in theory, if I understand it correctly, we could generate a Polygon 2D for... this came up because I was talking on Discord about I'd like to do a Worms style game, because I used to love Worms back in the day.
Yeah.
I used to play strangers online and really annoy them because I was really good with the ninja rope. Like, most people didn't realize you could actually swing up to the top if you did it right. You could swing over the overhang to them, drop the dynamite, and swing back down. All within the time limit. So, people would hate that. The problem Worms has is it's got this 2D destructible terrain, and making 2D terrain that updates its collision is one of those really resource intensive things that you kind of want to be a bit careful with.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the thing. I've also been working on another prototype, but we could talk about that in a minute.
Yes, I was going to say worms, but also if you think back in the day, lemmings, they had destructible terrain you could dig through.
They did. That's true.
Be interesting to know how they did that back then. I bet there's an article somewhere online to find out.
Probably. I mean, so the problem with worms' destructible terrain is it's randomly generated.
Mm. And if I remember correctly, it was self-supporting, so you couldn't. Could you undermine yourself and then it fall down, or did it just take out the area? I can't remember.
It just
It's
took out the
so
area.
long ago.
It wasn't self-supporting. So yeah, it's.
Oh yeah, because you used to like be able to sit on a pixel, and it'd be really annoying trying to get the person once they've still sat on that pixel.
For those of you who haven't played Worms, I do recommend the first couple of games. After sort of Worms Armageddon, the shaft literally jumped, and they just become very gimmicky. But yeah, the first few games was well worth it.
Yeah, thanks, Malakon. Yeah, it did just take out the area.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, destructible terrain's definitely been around since tanks as well, which obviously
It's
what
totally
Worms
doable.
is based on. Yeah,
it's more how often you're having to do it, because I don't know. There's a bunch of different ways you could do it. I guess you could do it with tile maps and auto tiles. Maybe it'd be annoying to set up, but you could do. So I don't know. I'll have to play with it. Shall I show them the prototype that I've been working on?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So I don't yet know if this is a mini course for Godot 3 or one of the courses that we put in Godot 4 for the huge Godot 4 course. So I'd love your opinion on this, guys. Let me pull up the correct game.
No worries. Yeah, it'd be useful on the standpoint. We don't think this would be an right at the very beginning. It would be in the middle of a course if it was in the big Godot course.
There we go. Share screen. Are you ready, Mikey?
I'm ready.
Share entire screen. Wibbity boop. Can you see it?
I can see it. They should be able to see it in a few moments.
So this is all very placeholder, very simplified, with some debug tools such as boink.
All the balls.
I had to limit how many balls because I just hammered it a few times to see what would happen, and exponentially grew, and the computer crashed. So yeah.
Evening,
very
Daz.
Simple. Hello, Daz. Very, very simple. Kind of proof of concept. Again, there's a couple of interesting gotcha moments, like working out exactly where the ball is hitting on a tile map, working out the reflections. I was using a rigid body for the ball, which would do that for you. But the problem with that is a rigid body is going to slowly lose velocity every time it hits something, even if you put the bounce to full and friction to zero. Mostly because the bat isn't a rigid body, so you can't give that a physics property, a physics material.
Yeah.
So the ball is actually a kinematic body, which means I have to manually put in all these deflections. Like the motion is coded per frame, as opposed to just let to run. So there's a few interesting moments going in there, and there's some power-ups that I want to put in. I also want to put in like the traditional laser thing. I've also got this debug that can make everything move up. And if everything goes wibbity, wibbity, wibbity,
the game ends.
Boink. Yeah. So that's what we have so far. I'm going to stop my stream.
And we're back.
And we're back.
Yeah. Awesome.
So yeah, Arkanoid or Breakout, or whichever one you want to call it. Fun fact, Breakout was apparently designed by Steve Wozniak for Atari.
I didn't know that.
I think, from what I read.
Daz, that's a great question. I think it applies to what the function you were talking to me about earlier.
Yes. So there is a function I didn't realize in Vector 2s and Vector 3s, which is reflect. In fact, shall I show my screen again?
Yeah. I knew the moment you closed it down, it would be required.
Oh, yeah, totally. All right. So let's take a look at the script. Here we go. All right. So because we're doing this with a kinematic body, we have to access get slide collision, which means we're doing some interesting things with move and slide, including having to tweak how many steps it is for reasons. In fact, I can show you the reasons. But there's this thing here, reflect, which will take any vector 2 or vector 3, I imagine, and then reflect it across a normal that you provide. So if I've got the glider here, I can then get the collision normal because this is a kinematic 2D collision object. So with that going on, I could just say, okay, so the motion is the negative reflection, because clearly this reflection is the reflection in the direction I'm going. I want to reflect away from it, multiply by speed.
Yeah.
And if it's a tile map, I want to emit the signal so that the level knows what to do with it. To show you what will happen if I don't mess with these steps, this took me a good 15, 20 minutes to figure out.
It sticks to the wall.
Sometimes. And the reason it's doing this is it's now getting collisions the default amount of times. The default amount of times is 4 per frame. So it's pushing away from the wall, towards the wall, away from the wall, towards the wall.
And therefore stays on the wall.
Yeah, it just does that, which is cool. But another fun thing you can do, let's put that back. So I only want one step. Another fun thing you can do is make the balls bounce off each other. I've yet to decide if that's a good idea or not. Let's get them up here. Blink, blink, blink. It just makes things a little bit harder to sort of predict when there's balls bouncing off each other. So yeah, my question for you guys is, should this be a mini course for Godot 3, or should this be part of the upcoming Godot 4 course? Answers on a postcard to the usual. No, answers in the doobly-doo.
I mean, I will chime here and say, why not both?
Because then people are buying the same course twice.
But in Godot 4, who knows? I don't know how, it's one of those things. Sometimes a course would almost be a one-to-one replica.
Yep.
But sometimes there'll be something new introduced that means that it's not a one-to-one replica. You do things differently.
I actually dragged the code I have into Godot 4.
Yes.
And spent a good time like updating the various changes in the scripts, including kinematic bodies and now character bodies, and a whole bunch of other things. It's no longer collision.collider, it's now collision.getCollider. So, lots of little things like that. The whole way tile maps work is different. But I've yet to figure out the new syntax for connecting signals in code. I've followed the documentation a couple of times, but I'm missing something.
Or it might be bugged. There is that.
It might be. I don't think so. I think I'm missing something. So Roderick thinks it's a good start for 4. I don't know that this is a first course for 4. I think the first course, you really want to be focused on things like variables, functions, arrays, dictionaries, very, very sort of building block times. A couple of signals. I think Minesweeper might be a good first game. I'd have to give it different names so we don't, trade off Microsoft's copyright.
Well, it'd be too confined, wouldn't it? Instead of trying to avoid them, you'd have to find them. Melicon actually raises a point there, but I don't know whether any conversion would be in the course. So how to convert your projects?
From what I understand, conversion is going to be automatic.
When it's
not
ready.
Currently,
yeah,
but yeah. So I don't know. Maybe. I think it's a good second or third game for 4. Originally, I thought a dice roller would be nice for a first course, and I made a very simple little dice roller. You just drop down menu for how many dice, and then a little dial for what kind of dice. So 4d6, 10d10, whatever. And it just tells you what the results are. The problem is that's not a game. So you don't actually get a fun win. It's a little tool you can write. It's a useful tool, teaches a lot. That's more of a YouTube video, I think.
Yeah, so it's always a fine balance, isn't it? Because you can teach and end up with something that's not a game at the end of it. You haven't got an experience, a player experience at the end of it. You've got a tool.
So maybe the first module of the new Godot 4 thing, at some point we're going to have to tell them what the name is so I can stop, stopping myself from saying it at the last moment.
Perhaps we should buy the domain first.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe the first thing should be learning the basics of Godot with classic games. So there's a Minesweeper style game, there's a Breakout style game, there's what was the other one? Snake.
Yeah.
Again, some basic little gotcha moments that you don't expect in there that are kind of interesting.
Yeah, Render, you're spot on there. This is something we have to balance all the time. Anything that we make for Godot 3 at this point in time will be very short-lived, potentially.
And people aren't buying it as much.
Yeah.
Like the Tuki Bubble mini course, and this isn't a complaint, is fun and it's fine and people are enjoying it, but it didn't sell as excitedly as the other mini courses, which is fair enough. Godot 4 is coming. People are holding back.
Yeah.
Get it.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Saw exactly the same thing with the transition between Blender 2.79 and when 2.8 came out, which is a fundamental difference.
Yahtzee could be a good idea. I mean, it's effectively dice poker. I've never really enjoyed the game, but it doesn't mean it couldn't be done.
Well, that's another. This is always something that crops up time and time again. You can have some wonderful games, but ultimately, if we don't like those things, those topics as instructors, it can be incredibly hard to teach it with the enthusiasm that we naturally have for all of the other stuff that we do.
And I think one of the big things we do that works well for us is every project, every coding project and game project we make is something we enjoy, something we like to play, and something that is fun for you guys to play. We could very easily just do very simple little tools, right? So random number generator, a random word generator. You know, look, we had this idea for a pub name generator, which I could quite easily do. Actually, the biggest problem is getting a long list of adjectives and nouns. And it's fine, but it's not a game. It's a tool, right? Or a toy, or a proof of concept. Maybe a card game.
Yeah,
I'm glad you enjoyed the Tuki Bubble course, Render. I actually think Tuki Bubble is one of the best teaching courses I've done. I mean, Sokoban was pretty good too, but like I've finally gotten into my stride. There's also a fun little Easter egg in the Tuki Bubble course. Can I tell them the Easter egg, Mikey?
That's up to you. There's no Easter egg in my course.
So I realized halfway, well, I realized after the first few videos, I had 26 videos left on my curriculum.
Oh, I know where we're going.
And you know how I always start with, hello, you adjective Godot people. Every video has an adjective that starts with the next letter in the alphabet after the first few, which was very tricky when I got to X.
Hello, you xylophone.
That's not an adjective. I actually had to look one up. There was
that's true.
Xenophilic, I think it was. Love of strangers, because I wanted positive adjectives.
Yeah, that's very true.
So yeah, I was quite pleased with that. I went through the whole thing.
Yeah, I think a card game could be.
I mean,
could be a bit more interesting.
Games, so yeah,
it'd certainly be that. Certainly be a next step up from a dice roll where you're just dealing with numbers.
I mean, what I do want to do is a Pong clone, because it's got very, very simple. Not really AI, but kind of AI.
Oh, like the tracking of your opponent, yeah.
Like you can make a local multiplayer version, that's fine. But how do you get the opponent to actually do it? Do you get it to always try and match where the ball is, but have it at a fixed speed, so it's easy to get it past the thing if you do the right kind of shot?
Yeah.
And again, you're worried about reflections and constant speeds and things like that.
That's a real hard one to balance, because obviously you could probably code it in such a way that it's impossible to lose, or for it to lose, which would obviously be no fun.
A card drawing program could be quite tricky, especially if you want the graphics for it. Like I would suggest using Tweens. In terms of managing the data, there's a few ways you could do it. One I would assume would be an array of all possible cards, and then another one which is an array of held cards, which you can add and remove things to. And then it's just if held cards dot has. Use dot has, not if card in held cards, because dot has is a built-in function, which means you're going to be using C, which can be quicker. And if you've got lots and lots of data to go through, it actually makes a difference.
So there was a game on the Amiga, so we're going back a few years here, guys. Amiga 500.
That was always Atari ST, but
I think it was on the Amiga. I may be getting this wrong because we are going back a while, but it was a casino thing, and it had like different opponents that you could play, and they all had different personalities, and depending on the game you were playing,
there was roulette and poker. And,
yeah.
There was one like that on the ST as well.
But there was like
a rendered casino.
But there was a like an air hockey game. Whereas if you won, the glass at the back on their side shattered, if I remember correctly, to show that you had won that round. And so, yeah, air hockey sprang to mind when you were talking about
I actually
Pong.
played the idea of air hockey back when I first started looking at discovering Godot, and I wanted a 3D game. But at the time, I was having problems because the puck was picking up so much speed it would break physics.
That is a problem. If you've got a physics lock, you can actually put some. Obviously, you'd have to put a dampener on the speed. But I remember the game being very, very. You could send it up to no end of knots, and it was quite a bit of fun.
That's the thing. You want the speed,
yeah,
but you also need the physics to work. Basically, for those of you who don't know what we mean by breaking physics, every frame it's calculating physics, and one of the things it checks is, has the collision overlapped another collision layer that it's supposed to interact with? If so, do the thing you meant to do. So it's an area you can now detect. If it's a physics body, you will now bounce or stop or slide or whatever you're meant to do. But if you're going fast enough, you will have passed through the thing between frames.
Yes.
Which means that there's no collision.
Yes, if the ball was my head and then it was Jan's head on the next frame, he's that way. Then, and this is the collision in the middle, then it doesn't know that it's collided. I mean, you can write things that says if it's beyond a boundary, it goes back to that boundary and then reflects as if it had hit it from that point. But that's more computation, and that's a lot of error checking required.
Yep. CG suggests a brain game with Jan's favorite adjectives called Yanjectives. Oh, I meant to do that coupon thing, didn't I? I'll see if I can do it for Friday, which is the day in question.
Yes.
So I was toying with the idea of doing a coupon for Godot games because it's my birthday on Friday. I don't want to do it site-wide, partly because I haven't run it past Paul and Aaron. I could do it site-wide, but I'd like to run it past them before I discount their courses. But I don't know that there is an easy way for us to say there's a discount, but only for these courses.
No, we have to do it on each individual one, I believe. Yep. We could sit down on Friday and sort it out. It's fine.
Yeah, movement prediction would fix it, Elicon, but it's not something you want to dabble with like at the start of a 3D course.
No. Or maybe.
Maybe.
into the deep end we go.
21st birthday, 2-point-something times. Yeah. I'm going to be 46.
I'm not going to say a thing because I thought about saying something. I went, that's not complimentary.
No. 46. I don't mind getting older. I mind my body working less and less.
I've noticed that. And I've not reached your...
When I was in my 20s and my early 30s,
yeah,
I would walk for hours. Like I would routinely walk from Victoria, or near Victoria, Pimlico, where I lived, to my friend's house in Whitechapel, which is a 4-hour walk, hang out for the day, and then walk back. I would rollerblade. It was the 90s. Give me a break. From my place in Pimlico to Southwark College in Lambeth and back. Right? It was fine. Now I can't do that. My feet just won't take the strain. 46 is the new 28 times 2. There was a guy who used to tell me, you're as old as you feel. My problem with this was I was in quite a lot of physical pain and felt very old, and that didn't make me feel any better at all.
I think it's just something that we have to accept, that as we get older, we have to take things...
just a number. Yes, it's a very big number.
Very, very true.
Yep.
So yeah, lots to look forward to, and lots of sort of preparation coming up for Godot 4.
And I'm looking forward to this little learn the basics of Godot by making a classic arcade collection, or whatever we call it, for our rediscovering Godot course. Not the name of it.
Although that would actually work as well. So,
I mean, for anyone who'd taken the original course, it would make sense. For people who are just coming to it new, be like, oh, this is not a beginner course. I'll take something else.
Yeah, potentially. Names of courses do matter, so that is very true. We can't always assume that someone knows our faces. They might be fresh to it. So, a game that I've played recently that I think does actually use a lot of physics in the background as well is Carrion. In fact, it's one of the only games in recent history that I've actually completed.
Carrion?
They call it a reverse horror game. You start as...
Oh, yes. No, I do know this one.
Yeah, but it's... Interestingly, as I played it, I realized it's got a horror theme, but it isn't really a reverse horror game. It's a puzzle game. You know, effectively, you go around the level. As you get better abilities, you're able to access different parts of the level. And I thought the level structure was incredibly well made. You revisited areas in quite a natural way. Until I came to the very last area, I couldn't find a way to get into it. I explored the world, gave up, came back the next day, and it turns out I just didn't see a pipe that was hidden to the left of the screen, and there was no affordance that it was there. So usually in games, when there's an access point or something like that, it's lit up, or there's yellow tape, or there's something to say this is a hole you can go in. And I think what I must have done is it did have a cover over it, but at some point during my flailing around as this hideous body part monster, that I must have smashed it and not realized and carried on. But it was a hell of a lot of fun. Once your big massive gloop gets a bit of momentum to it, it actually you're big, you're powerful, but you're also cumbersome.
Mm.
And there are times in the game where it forces you to be your smaller, less evolved self.
Intriguing. I remember being intrigued by the screenshots. Oh, the trailer.
Well, it came on Game Pass, you see, so I was like, I want to try that, and I'm going to try it. I mean, it's not a particularly long game, hence why I was able to finish it. But I had a lot of fun during it, and I think it was just the right length as well.
I'm interested in what you said about it's not really a horror game. There's actually very few horror games. There's a lot of games with horror themes because it's actually a really hard aesthetic to do right. Because that lack of control is antithetical to a lot of games. Like a lot of games are about the player agency. Fear is a great example. That old FPS set with ghouls and ghosts everywhere. You're not frightened. You're a killing machine. There's no fear involved. It's not a horror game.
The only thing that's scary is all the jump scares. I remember very well you climbing up a ladder, and suddenly there's a little girl with the Japanese style horror with the half covered face, and she's just at the top of the stairs.
Jump scares are so cheap, though.
Yeah, you get used to it. I remember in Doom 3 where I'd run round and there would be a health pack or an ammo pack, and I'm like, I'm not picking that up. It'll cost me more in health and more in ammo with the secret door that's going to open.
I remember Doom, where it was very much, I mean, we've talked about this, it was very much a game where there is a monster in this dark corridor and it's me.
Yeah, it did that.
Running demons down with chainsaws. Like that feeling was very much part of the aesthetic, but it wasn't a classic horror genre. Because horror is about the lack of power, the lack of knowledge, fear of the unknown, helplessness.
Actually being weak.
A couple of games have done that very well.
Plasmodia, or I forget.
I don't
Insomnia. Insomnia was and you had to open the door, and you could creak and open the door. And Alien Isolation actually did it incredibly well. They managed to keep the tension going.
Well, Alien and Aliens were classic 19th century melodramas done as 20th century sci-fi.
Jaws in space.
Jaws in space was the tagline when they were selling it. But it was, I mean, if you look at the first time you see the alien, there's a very theatrical 19th century horror moment where they're just drawing out the moment of tension as long as possible. And it works by Ripley looking this way as slowly as she can. And the alien is here and you can see the alien. and then slowly and it's agony just watching that moment as someone, you know, as an audience member. That's horror.
I'm a big fan of Aliens. Well, the first two films. The third's a bit weird, and the fourth is very
Quite
strange.
like Resurrection.
But the thing that really got me going back to Alien was how it's so different as a film to anything modern. You do have these long drawn out scenes, and they actually add to the whole feeling of being in space where everything's slow and you're waiting.
It also
for
does
something
that classic
to happen.
thing where at the beginning of Alien, the ship, the Nostromo, feels colossal.
Yeah.
But it feels more and more crowded and claustrophobic as the movie goes on, which is a very, you know, horror movie and melodrama trick. I'm using melodrama in the theatrical sense, not in the overacting sense.
Yeah, I think that was amazing. And of course, the games that came from that as well. So Alien versus Predator back from the 1998, 2000 era. That was absolutely phenomenal. And as a Marine, because you got one of the great things about that game was you got to play as all three species. The Marine, you were weak as you.
I never even bothered playing as Marines. Like, why? I don't like being scared. Why would I put myself through this? I'm going to be the Predator. I'm going to land in the middle of a bunch of Marines, roar, and jump out the way while they shoot each other.
But yeah, I remember because they also had dynamic lighting. So whenever I played, because I played quite a bit of it online, and whenever I started the game, if I was an alien or playing as Predator, I'd run around the level just smashing all the lights. Because the worst thing you can be in that game is visible. And once there were no lights, night vision it really sucked, and flares were bad.
Really interesting thing about that game, like a lot of interesting stuff about that game. From what I remember from an interview with one of the developers, the storyline was meant to be 3 completely separate stories, but to save time while they were prototyping it, they just started reusing the levels.
Yes.
And so they just moved the objectives somewhere else and the start somewhere else. And then thought, well, why don't we just play through the same story, but from 3 different points of view?
It worked incredibly well.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And we should do more game analysis streams, like where we play a game and analyze it.
Yeah, we did that a couple of months ago, maybe a year ago now.
We should analyze Stick Fight. We haven't analyzed Stick Fight for a while.
And then Speedrunners. Yeah.
And then Human Fall Flat.
Yes. Great games.
Very good.
Yeah, amazing. Have you played anything new recently?
I actually finally got into 7 Days to Die, which I didn't think I was going to enjoy, not least because I'm kind of over zombies, but it's very compelling. I played it only for like 30, 40 minutes a couple of weeks ago. Because I saw that they had a load of updates, and that usually means the game is improved and are probably selling, so they have the funds to improve it. And I had an experience where I ran out towards a lake, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then there were zombies around, and of course they're quite slow and pathetic during the day. I was like, donk, easy, donk. Did you put a donk on it?
I did. I then built up I was by a cabin by the woods. But then out of nowhere, a dog appeared.
Yeah.
They are vicious. And I'm like,
I had a bear appear on mine.
Oh dear. But I climbed on top of a rock. I was like, excellent. Yeah, you can't get up here. Your pathfinding doesn't let you.
Yep.
But what am I going to do? I'm on a rock. I can't do anything. I can see my house, but I know I don't have either the stamina nor health to get there. And I've not got any arrows or anything.
I was playing a solo game, and I got to day 7, which is when the horde comes, right? And I'd taken this house over, and I'd strengthened it. I was feeling very proud of myself. There's only one way in, and I can get them at a choke point, and great. And about 2 minutes into it, I'm taking a bunch of damage, and I turn around, and there's like 6 zombies behind me in my house.
How did you get in?
So after the whole thing is over and I died repeatedly, I go and look, and what they'd done is they jumped up on a trash can and then onto an air conditioning unit and just gone through the window.
Yeah, one of the good things about that game is the destructible terrain. Not terrain, sorry, but the buildings themselves, which does
Well,
mean
the
that
terrain too.
you can undermine the actual house. You can end up with it collapsing if you're not careful.
If
And
you make your house completely impenetrable, they'll dig underneath.
I know a tactic used to be for the game that you dig down and then they just pathfind and you wait till daytime and then come up. But yeah, I found it fascinating. Also, the way that you can reinforce things. You know, you go around the house and try and fix holes.
I love the exploration.
Yeah, and nighttime is actually pitch black.
Yes.
That to me was brand new in that type of game. I was like, oh.
I turned the gamma up a bit because it was a bit too black.
Well, I remember sitting there. This wasn't this playthrough, but the first time I ever tried the game, I sat there in the house, and I didn't know how many zombies it was, so I wasn't going to go out until the morning. But I just sat there for, I don't know how long the nights are, like 10, I think it's 10 minutes or so. But I was sat there, just, okay, I'll craft some stuff. Ran out of crafting things to do. I'm just sat there in the dark, because I like playing these games in the dark.
Had this brilliant idea.
It's just going,
I have a brilliant idea. I run out of things to craft, and I'm in this house. I know I'm going to mine for resources.
Okay.
Whole house fell on my head and killed me. So we have about 4 minutes left. We're coming up to the end. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, thoughts, comments, interpretive dances, or jingles that they want to share with us about our new courses, our current courses, Mikey's married life? Congratulations, Mikey.
Thank you.
You did say that, you know, getting married is a major, wonderful thing and achievement. I liked it so much I did it twice.
Yeah, my brothers were joking to me. They were saying, "Didn't you learn from the first time?" I was like, "Nah." In for a penny.
Next time, if there is a next time, will be the third. But you know, 46. You got to be the cliche, right? I mean, all I need now is a midlife crisis mobile.
But you know nothing.
I don't really.
You know nothing about cars.
A sports car, so I'm just going to get one of those little pedal ones.
A Flintstones mobile.
It's a little go-kart.
So married life
so far?
Exactly like it was. No, actually, that's going to come out wrong. Preface: you know when you turn 18 and you're like, oh yeah, it just feels like where I was when I was 17, and yeah, it's exactly the same as I was before. Only I have a ring on my finger, and yeah.
And whenever you say "hello, wife," she smiles at you.
I've learnt so a little bit from my speech. I when I was stood there, I said, "Yeah, I've been doing lots of learning so far. So far, I've learnt that she's always right, and I'm working on yes, dear."
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's absolutely fantastic, and I couldn't be happier.
Yep, I'm glad to hear it.
But thank you for asking, Roderick.
And don't forget to check out the courses if you haven't done already.
Yep.
There's links up in the chat up there. There's the procedurally generated modular weapons in Blender 3 Plus, or whatever we called it.
Yep.
There's 2 Key Bubble, which is a puzzly game, and upcoming stuff.
Yes, we'll keep you up to date over the week as we start planning out the next things for the action RPG. I've got a few ideas of which course I want to cover next, but I want to make sure they also all align with one another. Talking to Jan earlier, it was a case of, well, should I do the modular armor? No, that requires the characters,
which means we need animation, which, you know.
And then we went round in a few circles and went, probably going to be the modular dungeon.
Yep.
I think that's the next one to tackle. But I'll let you all know soon.
And I will eat the ribs I've got waiting for me downstairs. I put them in the air fryer with the fries.
Oh, that sounds nice. So when can I come over?
I'm sorry, those are mine. You can't have them.
Nom, 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 nom.
When Mikey told me originally invited me to his wedding. He said, "There's going to be so much food, even you won't be able to eat it all." Challenge accepted.
How did you get on?
And I ate it all.
You missed the pork rolls in the evening.
Well, sure, I had to cycle back until I got 6 miles from home and the sun went down. And I realized that my rear light had fallen off and it was too dangerous to cycle. And I had to walk the last 6 miles.
Oh, no.
Like a muppet.
Awesome. So I think that will conclude today. I've had a wonderful time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Keep making awesome stuff and sharing your things on the Discord.
Oh, I've loved seeing some of the axes come through. It's been amazing seeing them.
I loved, was it renders or CGs? I can't remember whose it was. I think it might have been CGs. Tukey Bubble
with the axes.
Axes was amazing.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
So yeah.
So thanks everybody.
Thank you for having everybody, and we'll see you next time. And keep being amazing.
Woo!
Bye.
I can't press it while I'm doing this.
Press it. Press it.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Press it.